Welcome back to the Tool Crib. Today we are going to be talking about Victorinox SwissTool Spirit models and lessons that I think that Leatherman can take from Victorinox. So on the table today I have the SwissTool Spirit X on the left. In the center is the SwissTool Spirit CS, and on the right is the now discontinued SwissTool Spirit S. Now, what we're going to focus around today is the outer tools on a multi-tool, and something that I like that Victorinox does. So generally, and there are exceptions to this rule, but generally there are five outside accessible tools that people like to see in varying combinations on their multi-tool. Those are going to be namely the knife blade, the serrated blade, file, saw, and scissors. Well, the problem is you have 4 available slots for 5 available tools. Now, again, there are other tools that you can have on there, but these are the 5 core tools that we'll generally see on any given multi-tool. So, with the SwissTool Spirit X, what they do is they eliminate the one tool that they leave out is going to be the serrated blade or the wavy blade in the case of the SwissTool Spirit model. So they have the saw, the file, knife, and scissors. Now, we're not specifically going to talk about the design of the scissors necessarily because these are a little bit different than the Victorinox knives or the larger Victorinox multi-tools. We're just going to talk about the functionality. So these are still pretty good scissors in their own right, even though I kind of lean more towards the larger ones. Now, with the SwissTool, well, first of all, who would want this setup for the outer tools? Well, that's going to be the person who doesn't obviously need a serrated blade. So someone who's not necessarily cutting on man-made materials like rope or strap or something like that. And then with the CS, they have the saw, the file, the serrated blade, and the scissors. Well, who does this appeal to? This is going to appeal to the person who carries a dedicated folder. Maybe someone wants a little higher class knife for their dedicated folder, better blade steel, things of that nature, any number of different reasons. This is the tool that's going to most appeal, or the configuration that is going to most appeal to that person. And then on the right with the SwissTool Spirit S, this is the person who doesn't really find a need for scissors that often. So these are going to have, this is actually my favorite setup, but not because I don't like to have scissors on a multi-tool. I'll talk about that in a second. So they have the knife, the serrated blade, saw, and file. All very, very good tools on the SwissTool Spirit. Now, the reason that I lean towards this tool, which unfortunately again is discontinued, is the fact that Victorinox has a plethora of different knives that you can get scissors with. Now, I tell you what, the one thing Victorinox ought to do, though, that I think they ought to do, I believe if they made a 91mm single layer with a pair of scissors on it, I think that thing would just walk out the door so fast they couldn't manufacture enough of them. Because I know a lot of people that have different varying multi-tools that the one tool that is missing on the outer tools is going to be a pair of scissors, and I think that the Victorinox scissors are some of the best out there when it comes to multi-tools and multi-knives. So if they did that, boy, I think they would sell a bundle of them. So this is going to appeal again to the person who doesn't necessarily see a need for scissors. Well, it's interesting, though, that the one model they discontinued is actually the one model that I prefer the most because I actually use all 5 of these tools, but I find it more easy to replace or to find a pair of scissors in a different, either a small scissor-based multi-tool or a multi-knife that has a good pair of scissors. It's exceedingly difficult to find, not necessarily for the folder. The folder, that's probably the most common way that you could go about it, but I actually like to have the knife blade on my multi-tool. The SwissTool Spirit X, surprisingly, is is probably the best seller from the Victorinox line, and it gets rid of the serrated blade. So my point is this. Each one of these models and configurations appeal to different people. Now let's talk about Leatherman. Now I brought in the Leatherman Wave and against the SwissTool Spirit S because ironically these tools are set up pretty much the same way. Now granted they're different interior tools, but we're talking about the outer ones just for now. So they have the saw, the serrated blades, the files, and the knife blades. Now What's interesting about this is the one model that Victorinox decided, for whatever reason, whether it was lack of sales or lack of interest, the one model that they decided to drop from their line was the SwissTool Spirit S. And that's exactly the way the Wave is configured. Now, my thought is that Leatherman could really take some lessons from Victorinox when it comes to this. Now, you can't do this across every multi-tool, namely like the Rebar or the Super Tool 300, the SURS, then the Wave, then the Charge. I just don't think that's a feasible option. But you can do this, I think, to one multi-tool, and that would be your flagship, and the Wave Plus is definitely the flagship tool of Leatherman. So, I love how Victorinox appeals to different people. For someone who doesn't necessarily need a serrated blade, someone who doesn't necessarily need the standard blade, or someone who doesn't necessarily need a pair of scissors. Now, I personally, again, like this model because of the fact that you can add scissors, in my opinion, a lot easier than you can some of those other tools, and I actually like to have the knife on my multi-tool. So if Leatherman decided to do something like this, where they would have models that would drop off the blade, the serrated blade in favor of scissors, or drop off the main blade in favor of scissors, along with their standard Leatherman Wave Plus, then they could free up the one slot on the inside of the Wave for their scissors. Now, the Wave scissors are not bad. My problem with the Wave scissors is they are very cumbersome. First of all, you have to open up the multi-tool to get to them, and let's just go ahead and do that. You have to open up the multi-tool to get to them, okay? Then you have to pry them out, fold them out, reset before you can actually use them. Where in the case of the Leatherman Surge, which is my multi-tool of choice, they are direct access, outside accessible right there. This is one thing that the Wave has always been missing, is a nice outside pair of scissors. Now, if they decided to go this route where they were taking the, changing out some of these other tools in favor of adding in scissors to some of their models, I think this could be incredibly advantageous for Leatherman, because then you could appeal to a broader base of people. People could then more closely find the model that best suits them. And if I just really love the way Victorinox does this. I'm really saddened that they dropped this one from the line, but I'm fortunate enough that this one was actually gifted to me by one of my subscribers, Manuel Briones. He was kind enough to send this one my way, and I was very, very happy to receive this one because this is actually my favorite configuration, for reasons that I stated earlier. Now, with Leatherman's release or leaked releases of upcoming multi-tools such as the Curl and the Bond, I don't know until we get them in hand how well they're going to fare. They're not going to have the locking tools. I just feel like Leatherman sometimes is going in the wrong direction. Now, I understand what they're trying to do with those tools, but I think that they could move in a different direction, or not necessarily a different direction. This would just be a kind of a sideways variant to an already established multi-tool. I really think that they could benefit from creating different models like this. Now, if you guys have opinions about this, I would certainly love to hear about them, discuss them, see what you guys think, and if you had the ability to change the Wave for the outer tools in one of those other configurations such as Victorinox has, what would be the one tool that you would drop off? That's an interesting question. My name is Ben. You've been watching the Texas Tool Crib. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you in the next one.